Imagine waking up one day to find your world has turned pitch black. Your eyes no longer serve their purpose. This is the chilling story of an ordinary woman who was greeted by an unusual awakening. The break of dawn offered no solace, no light for her to bask in. She found herself plunged into an abyss of darkness. Her eyes, once her window to the world, now failed her, casting her into a world of complete and utter blackness. In the beginning, there was confusion. A simple blink, she thought, might clear away the darkness. But each blink was as ineffective as the last. The darkness remained, stubborn and unyielding. Her heart pounded against her chest like a war drum, a fast-paced rhythm of fear and apprehension. Panic soon set in, a creeping sensation that crawled under her skin and coursed through her veins. She groped around in darkness, her hands reaching out for something, anything that could make sense of this unfathomable situation. The familiar contours of her home now felt alien and treacherous. Each step was a step into the unknown, a leap of faith in the face of fear. Her desperation was palpable. It hung in the air, a thick cloud of despair. She stumbled, fumbled in search of a source of light, a phone, anything that could cast away the shadows that held her captive. But her world remained as dark as ever, a void that refused to be filled. The reality of her situation sank in. It was a weight that pulled her down, a truth too heavy to bear. A horrifying thought crossed her mind, a thought she pushed away in fear, but the fear remained, a persistent whisper in the back of her mind. With a sinking heart, she reached up to her face, only to feel the hollow where her eyes should have been. Stripped of her sight, the woman was left to navigate her world with her remaining senses. Blindly, she reached out into the abyss, feeling her way around the familiar yet now alien landscape of her home. Her hands, once instruments of precision, were now her eyes, clumsily guiding her through the labyrinthine layout of her life. Each step was a calculated risk, a dance with the unknown. The once comforting hum of the refrigerator was now a dissonant symphony, a chilling reminder of her newfound darkness. The scent of her morning coffee, usually a beacon of warmth, was now a cruel irony, its aroma wafting through the air, mocking her with its normalcy. Her fingers traced the edges of countertops, the rough fabric of the living room couch, the cold, unfeeling surface of her bedroom mirror. Each object she touched etched a stark blueprint of her life as she knew it, a life now shrouded in perpetual night. With every bump into a forgotten chair, every stubbed toe on a protruding corner, frustration bubbled within her. The confines of her once cherished sanctuary had transformed into an inescapable prison. Her heart pounded in her chest like a war drum, echoing the terror that gripped her soul. The world outside her window carried on, oblivious to the horror unfolding within her four walls. She shouted out for help, her voice echoing through the empty rooms, only to be met with silence. The realization sank in, the gravity of her situation weighing her down. She was alone, adrift in a sea of darkness, no land in sight. Her world had been reduced to a collection of sounds, scents, and textures, a cruel mockery of the vibrant life she once knew. The chilling silence was broken only by the tick-tock of the grandfather clock, a sinister reminder of the relentless passage of time. The ticking resonated with her heartbeat, a haunting symphony playing in the theater of her mind. She was alone in her darkness, her only company the echo of her own fears. It said that when one sense is lost, the others heighten. She could hear whispers, feel things she never noticed before. With her sight gone, the world was transformed into a symphony of sound, touch, and scent. The subtle hum of the refrigerator was now like a steady drumbeat. The soft rustle of the wind outside her window became a choir of whispers. She could feel the texture of the air, the minute changes in temperature that seemed to dance on her skin. Even the faintest scent, once unnoticed, now wafted to her like a siren's call. But with this heightened awareness came an unsettling realization. She was not alone. There was something else here with her, something unseen, something she could feel but not see. It was a presence, a specter that seemed to lurk at the edges of her perception. A chilling current ran down her spine, prickling her skin, as if a cold wind had swept through the room. She could hear it, a faint rustling like the softest whisper of cloth against skin. It was there, and then it wasn't, a ghostly echo in the silence. It was as if the very walls of her home were keeping a secret, a dreadful truth that she could only guess at. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in the hollow silence. Paranoia gnawed at the edges of her mind. Fear was a bitter taste in her mouth, a cold knot in the pit of her stomach. She was blind, vulnerable, alone with this unseen resident. And then she felt it, a gaze. It was a sensation, a prickling at the back of her neck, a feeling of being watched. She could almost sense its eyes on her, even though she herself could not see. She could hear it breathe, a soft, chilling exhale that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She could hear it breathe, feel its gaze upon her even without her eyes. The whispers grew louder, the presence stronger. The unseen eyes watched her every move. In the middle of the silence, invisible eyes lingered. They held her captive in their gaze, unseen yet omnipresent. The woman could not see them, but she could feel them. It was a sensation akin to the chill that runs down the spine when one feels they are being watched. Yet, this was far beyond a mere chill. It was a cold, relentless dread that consumed her entire being. The whispers were like sinister lullabies in the dark, weaving a haunting melody that echoed in the hollows of the room. They were not just sounds, they were entities, specters that danced around her, taunting her with their ethereal voices. They were the voices of the unseen, the unheard, the unfathomable. The woman, once a mere victim of an inexplicable affliction, was now a prey. She was trapped in a twisted game of cat and mouse, where the predator was unseen and the prey blind. She tried to flee, to escape the invisible prison that held her captive. But where does one run from something they cannot see? She tried to fight, to challenge the unseen presence. She lashed out into the air, her hands slicing through the nothingness, her voice ringing out in desperate cries. But how does one fight a ghost? How does one battle with shadows? Her efforts were futile, her resistance a mere spectacle for the unseen eyes. The terror escalated, the dread consuming her with every passing moment. She was not just blind, she was helpless, a puppet being manipulated by unseen strings. She was a prisoner, not of darkness, but of the unseen, the unknown, the unimaginable. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. The room seemed to close in on her, the walls whispering secrets only they knew. The unseen presence was no longer just a presence. It was a force, an entity, a haunting specter that had made her its plaything. And then it spoke. The voice was cold, emotionless. It echoed in her mind, chilling her to the bone. This voice, it was unlike anything she had ever heard before. It was a voice that seemed to emerge from the very shadows that now consumed her world. A voice that reverberated with an icy detachment that was as unnerving as it was terrifying. The words it spoke were laced with a cruel satisfaction. "I have taken from you what you most cherished," it taunted. "Your sight, your window to the world." The voice reveled in her horror, feeding off her despair as it proceeded to narrate its unsettling tale. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing her rising panic. The realization was a cruel blow, a horrifying truth she couldn't escape from. She was blind. Her world had been plunged into an eternal night, a darkness from which there was no awakening. She felt the tears welling up, but they wouldn't fall. There were no eyes to shed them. The voice seemed to take pleasure in her sorrow, its laughter a grating sound in her mind. It reveled in her pain, in her helplessness, in her despair. But the voice didn't stop there. It had more horrors to share, more truths to reveal. "You will never see the light of day again," it promised. A promise that was more of a curse. She was trapped in this darkness, a prisoner in her own body, bereft of the one sense that had connected her to the world. This was her reality now. A life devoid of light, of colors, of the faces of her loved ones. A life lived in the shadows, at the mercy of this voice. A life that was a living nightmare. It promised her one thing. She would never see the light of day again. But why? That, dear viewers, remains a mystery for another time. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.